Well, good morning or good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and a very warm welcome to this webinar on the fight against energy poverty and the SDG7 in the global dialogue, and on the Italian contribution and future perspectives about this subject. This webinar has been organized by the Italian Permanent Representation to International Organizations in Paris, in the framework of the Italian G20 presidency and as part of the Italian Festival for Sustainable Development organized by ASVIS, the Italian Association for Sustainable Development. This is Luca Franza, Scientific Advisor at Istituto Affari Internazionali, IAI. I would just like to give you a couple of housekeeping rules. This is a bilingual webinar in Italian and English. You can find a button for simultaneous translation in the corner of your Zoom app. The webinar is divided in 3 blocks and it will end at 12:30. The first block will be in English, the second block will be in Italian, and the third block will be again in English. There will hopefully be time for a Q&A section. So please feel free to post your questions in the chat, and then I will collect them and distribute them among the speakers. We have a very impressive lineup of speakers that I will introduce in a minute. Today we do not only have spectators of international efforts to fight energy poverty, but actually active protagonists in this commendable endeavor. And we will hear many different perspectives from international organizations, the private sector, governments, research agencies, cooperation agencies, and foundations. So without further ado, I would like now to give the floor to Ambassador Antonio Bernardini, Permanent Representative of Italy to international organizations in Paris, for his introductory remarks.
Good morning and welcome to our webinar dedicated to the SDG7 and energy poverty in the global dialogue, held in the framework of the Sustainable Development Festival. I'm very glad to open this discussion today together with the Director General of Development Cooperation of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Ambassador Giorgio Marrapodi. The access to more sustainable and clean energy concerns all of us, not only at the OECD, but at global level, if we want to succeed in our climate ambitions. For developing countries, the situation in the post-COVID pandemic has become even more challenging than before. More than 100 million people have no access to electricity in Asia and in Africa. The Italian G20 presidency included sustainable energy access at the top of its priorities, also in the perspective of having an effective outcome of the climate negotiations in the framework of the COP26. That, as we know, has been prepared a few days ago by the pre-COP hosted in Milan. We will have the opportunity today to listen to the contribution to the most recent global analysis by IRENA, thanks to the participation of my good friend Francesco La Camara, Director General of IRENA, and by the International Energy Agency, and we are so happy to have Ambassador Mary Warlick, Deputy Executive Director of the International Energy Agency, with us, and will be complemented by the point of view of the Italian Research Center, Enea, and we have another good friend, Gilberto Dialuce, President of Enea. I think that all the analysis of the IRENA and the International Energy Agency are highlighting the worrying lack of financing for achieving the net zero energy transition, and how such a gap of funds for the 70% concerns the emerging and developing countries. I believe we have to look into this issue with a great deal of attention, and also find innovative ways to achieve our climate objectives. No doubt we are in a very critical juncture now, not only because we are preparing the COP26 and we have great ambitions, but I'm sure that everybody is following the present energy crisis with a bit of concerns, because while it's clear there's nothing to do with energy transition, I think it's showing this crisis how needed is a good management of this energy transition to avoid the kind of what we call in Italy montagna russa, roller coaster effect that we have seen in the market in the recent months that might affect the ultimate objective to bring to net zero emissions in 2050 in order to contain the increase of the climate to 1.5 degrees. So I thank you you all for participating to today's webinar, and I give back the floor to Luca Franza to conduct the next part of the webinar. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ambassador, and I'm very pleased to see Ambassador Giorgio Marrapodi having joined us. He's the Director General for Development Cooperation at the Italian Institute for Foreign Affairs and International Cooperation. Please, Ambassador, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Franza. I'm very pleased to be with you today, with all of you. I see many friends and which are connected today in this, and let me start thanking my colleague Antonio Bernardini, Ambassador Bernardini in Paris, for having accepted the invitation of the Festival on Sustainable Development to involve the permanent mission in Paris in the calendar of events of the festival. The Ministry of Foreign Affairs has started cooperating. Well, I think you all know that the Festival on Sustainable Development is a widespread festival in Italy, but we started last year to involve the network of Italian embassies, consular offices, permanent missions, Italian Institute of Culture. And we had a very good success in this last year. And this year also, we are contributing to the 5th edition of the festival with the organization of 44 initiatives abroad, promoted by 39 diplomatic offices of Italy abroad. And of course, the permanent mission in Paris is one of them. As presidency of the G20 and co-presidency of COP26, Italy has taken steps to transform current challenges, starting with the pandemic and climate change, into opportunities for a more sustainable, resilient recovery in line with the Sustainable Development Goals. We have placed people, the planet, and prosperity at the center, recognizing the interdependence between among these dimensions. Beside health and food security, as the G20 presidency and the UK COP26 partner, we have encouraged more ambitious climate action, starting with the G20 countries themselves. This event comes indeed in a crucial moment under the threatening message, the sort of perfect storm from COVID-19 and climate change is sending us. The pandemic will probably last a few more years, and that the climate crisis has come alive as we see in real time. The report from the IPCC published in August tells us that some climate changes are now irreversible. They are there to stay, and they will affect all regions of the world, such as it was demonstrated by the recent heat waves, fires, and floods. Keeping global warming at manageable levels will require major changes in each country's economic policy. This difficult momentum could soon bring more social and political instability. Rather than stimulating a progressive political agenda, this could lead to ethnic, racial violence and chaos. This scenario, if not completely avoided, could indeed be mitigated with an increase in international cooperation. Regarding the climate, governments could declare that they will cut carbon dioxide and other greenhouse gas emissions more decisively to reach net zero in 10 years. Obviously, it is the rich and high emission countries which have to make the biggest cuts and have to transfer green technologies to developing countries, allowing them to decarbonize as well. On the other side, to control the pandemic, it is necessary to redistribute the vaccine doses available and remove the legal constraints on expanding production through compulsory licenses. Building a resilient and decentralized production capacity will be key to addressing the health crisis of the future and free the necessary resources for an inclusive and sustainable economic recovery. The Italian ODA keeps both issues high in its agenda. Within this picture, the renewable energy support is a way to meet the climate goals as well as to alleviate the economic consequences of the pandemic, which hit employment and the livelihoods hard, pushing millions of people, especially in developing countries, into poverty. In the recent launching of the Energizing Finance report and the Sustainable for All a few days ago, we learned from Domilola, she is among our guests, and I acknowledge that available finance for the minimum requirement of energy for households cover only 1/3 of the actual requirements. Thus, we are far from meeting the commitment of SDG7, and energy poverty needs further action to be tackled properly. In particular, the pandemic also threatened progress in clean cooking access, and by 2030, 2.4 billion people will remain without this opportunity, thus enhancing health problems through pollution. To tackle all these issues, energy financing is an increasingly prominent mechanism for international donors and development organizations, as well as private sector actors, given energy's role in job creation and as a prerequisite and enabler for other development objectives. Many instruments are already in place, such as, for example, the Climate Bonds Initiative, which is important to mobilize debt capital markets for green investments, empowering partner organizations with the tools and knowledge needed to influence and promote change. Many others are under study, and I guess we learn on some of them in this very meeting. Now, allow me briefly explain what we as Italy are doing in this period with our instruments. Well, last July at the G20 meeting on energy and climate in Naples, the ministers pledged to devote a significant part of their recovery plans to the ecological transition, which also represents an opportunity for economic and employment growth. Of equal importance is what we are doing at the EU level. In June 2021, the EU adopted a European climate law establishing the aim of reaching the zero greenhouse gas emissions by 2050. And as a member of the EU, Italy has the same objective. Ecological transition does not only mean spreading clean energy, but also conserving nature and biodiversity. The Italian cooperation has long included it among its priorities for action in partner countries, also because since cooperation is an integral and qualifying part of our foreign policy, it is aware of the geopolitical meaning of the ecological transition. While we are committed to accelerating the transition from an economy based on hydrocarbons to an economy based on renewables, we cannot ignore these geopolitical consequences. And in fact, shifts of forces and balances of power are foreseeable from those who control and export fossil fuels towards those who are at the forefront of mastering the green technologies of the future. It is also for this reason that the Italian cooperation in pursuing an energy strategy based on renewables promotes in partner countries a balanced energy mix, which looks to local context, favoring access to clean energy, even where the more traditional sources of energy are present. Let me conclude saying that most of the growth in both energy demand and in emissions will soon come from developing countries, but if they invest in the yesterday's and inefficient technologies, they will be locked into them for decades. And that's why we need to support their development in also with transfer of technology. The developing countries' appetite for energy already has a huge effect on the availability as already consequences on in the energy market. As development cooperation, we'll try to do our best to help in meeting this demand. It is our mandate to encourage our partners in catching up and with the renewable and to have sustainable energy, also from the energy point of view, sustainable development. A few words for Africa, which is the major beneficiary of Italian ODA, and where 600 million Africans still lack access to electricity today. It is necessary to implement policies which allow the continent to equip itself with the necessary infrastructure and technology so that it can guarantee its energy self-sufficiency and meet the demand that in the coming years will grow at twice the speed of the global average. We are currently supporting Africa energy needs for a more inclusive society with a number of projects across the continent, and one of them, the Illumina in Mozambique, is the topic of a specific intervention of this kind. We are of course present in many other countries like Burkina Faso, Burundi, Cameroon, Ethiopia, Kenya, Senegal, Tunisia, Uganda. We are supporting also other countries in the Middle East region and in Asia, and we have put once again strong emphasis on the energy sector, also in the 3-year programming and policy document, which was approved by the Interministerial Committee only a few days ago. I stop here. I hope I didn't take too much time, but I will be very eager to listen to all of you in this panel today. Thank you, Mr. Franza. Over to you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Ambassador, for your inputs. You actually already mentioned some of the topics that will be dealt with today, including the commitments by Italy, the importance of acting in sub-Saharan Africa, and also you mentioned the importance of renewable energy in the fight against energy poverty. And I think this is a particularly good bridge to the next section, which is actually the first block of today's webinar on international energy cooperation in the fight against energy poverty. This is indeed a very timely webinar, as it has been highlighted already, due to the social impact of the pandemic, but also due to the opportunities that have been created by the recovery funds that are being allocated in response to the crisis. And there's an energy price rally going on internationally that is going to have an impact, that is already having an impact. And also we have noticed the prominence of climate justice themes in the framework of international negotiations in the run-up to COP26. So I would like now to give the floor to Francesco La Camera, Director General of IRENA, to hear his views on how IRENA has contributed to tracking progress in achieving energy access and how renewable energy can contribute to the fight against energy poverty around the world, and just general reflections also on what kind of challenges he sees. Mr. La Camera, please, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you, Luca. And dear Ambassador Antonio Bernardini, dear Ambassador Giorgio Marapodi, cari Antonio e Giorgio, dear Excellencies, dear guests, it's with great pleasure that I'm here with you today, and I thank the Ambassador and his team for organizing this timely and important event. The COVID-19 pandemic continues to disrupt our lives in ways that were previously unimaginable, leaving a great social and economic toll in its wake. In many ways, the pandemic has laid bare existing inequalities in our society and accelerated many others. This will be compounded by the intensifying climate crisis over the coming years. This is a reality that we cannot longer ignore. We must urgently find ways to meet the ambition of the Paris Agreement to keep us on a 1.5-degree trajectory. IRENA fully stands behind this conviction that it is possible through a full-scale global energy transition. However, achieving an energy transition that is inclusive and just hinges on whether we can ensure that all countries and regions are able to benefit equally. This requires measures to address the unacceptable levels of energy poverty. Currently, 759 million people are living without electricity, many more without access to a reliable electricity supply, and 2.6 billion people who are reliant on traditional fuels for cooking. There are a myriad or number of ways in which people around the world are facing challenges to energy access. However, one thing is clear. It is currently estimated that by 2030, our effort will fall short of achieving universal modern energy access, leaving 660 million people still without electricity, and 2.5 billion continuing to rely on traditional fuels. Distributed renewable energy solutions will play a crucial role in expanding electricity and clean cooking access and achieving socioeconomic development priorities. The positive news is that, for the most part, the technological solution already exists. The business case to deploy off-grid renewable energy solution is strong, and costs have fallen dramatically over the last decade. Despite the only $1 billion was invested in off-grid renewables between 2008 and 2019, indicating the need for enhanced policy and regulation to facilitate increased investment and deployment. We need accelerated action to address energy poverty while steering the world on a Paris Agreement compliant pathway. IRENA's World Energy Transition Outlook presents options for limiting global temperature rise to 1.5 Celsius and bringing CO2 emissions to net zero by 2050, while simultaneously driving broad economic development as measured by a rise in GDP, job creation, and welfare benefits. In fact, IRENA Energy Transition Welfare Index, which analyzes the impact of energy access as well as economic, social, and environmental distributional dimension, find that overall welfare is improved by 11% and energy access grow by 70% in a 1.5 scenario compared to the planet energy scenario. It also contributes directly to achieving SDG7, which will have enormous development dividends. In addition to measures targeting residential access, a specific focus on linking distributed energy supply with public service, such as healthcare, education, and income-generating activities across sectors, such as agriculture, is also needed. Ensuring that expanded energy access will in turn contribute to poverty reduction through expanded livelihood opportunities and local and resilient job creation requires an appropriate and holistic ecosystem that supports livelihood. As reflected in the title of this session, international cooperation is central to achieving this aim. Fighting energy poverty requires concerted efforts from many stakeholders, ranging from
believe we are experiencing some.
And last, but certainly not least, the impacted communities themselves. As an intergovernmental organization with almost global membership and a unique mandate, IRENA is well placed to bring together countries as well as key non-governmental actors to drive forward the energy access agenda and fight energy poverty. ARENA places great emphasis on partnership and cooperation for addressing urgent global energy and development challenges. We look forward to enhance cooperation with all of our member states, including and naturally Italy, in the fight against energy poverty. So thank you very much. Thank you very much for your attention. Back to you, Luca.
Thank you very much, Director General, also for being very brief. I would indeed like to invite all the next speakers to follow your example, because we are running a little bit behind the schedule. But thank you so much. That was very interesting. I would like to give the floor now to Deputy Executive Director of the IEA, Ambassador Mari Warlick. Thank you so much, Ambassador, for being with us today. Unfortunately, Executive Director Fatih Birol couldn't join us due to last-minute commitments. So I would like to ask your views, Ambassador, on how you see the recent developments in global energy access, also in light of COVID-19, and how do you think that greater energy access can be achieved throughout the world, and whether you're optimistic about the future?
Well, thank you very much, Luca, and many thanks to Ambassador Bernardini and Ambassador Maripodi for their remarks, as well as Francesco. Thank you very much for the opportunity to be with you to speak on this really critical, important subject. I couldn't agree more that more action needs to be taken and that international cooperation is truly essential. The IEA commends Italy's G20 presidency for rightly putting the fight against energy poverty, especially in Africa, at the center of its program. Thank you so much for doing so. The energy sector, as you all know, remains central to ensuring economic and social development. Reliable, affordable energy to power, heat, illuminate, and cool our homes and hospitals, to cook, to travel, these are basic needs for every person in the world. Yet, by our estimates, somewhere around 770 million people globally lack access to electricity still, and 2.3 billion lack access to clean cooking. At the IEA, we started collecting access to energy data over 20 years ago, when data was still unavailable. And today, we are proud co-custodians alongside ARENA and others for tracking progress on Sustainable Development Goal 7, reaching universal access to clean, affordable energy for all by the end of this decade. Last week, the IEA released our World Energy Outlook 2021, and in it, we very much sound the alarm that COVID-19 has, for the second year in a row, reversed progress on achieving universal access by 2030. The number of people without access to electricity, in fact, grew by 2% in 2021. And this is particularly acute in sub-Saharan Africa, where nearly 570 million people today do not have access to electricity, more than half of the population. Africa saw the number of people without access to electricity peak in 2013. And thanks to strong focus on electrification in countries such as Kenya, Ethiopia, Ghana, and Senegal, the number of people without access was declining. However, COVID-19 has reversed this as countries have had to shift their focus onto relief from the pandemic. The pandemic has also forced millions back into energy poverty. 90 million people in Asia and Africa already connected to the grid have in fact lost the ability to pay for the electricity required for essential energy services. And finally, access to clean cooking, an often forgotten but hugely important health priority, remains underaddressed. 1/3 of the globe's population still cooks with dirty and harmful fuels, and this number grew by 1% due to COVID-19. But the solutions to achieving full access are known. Technologies are available, policies are proven, and investment needs are affordable. The world would need to invest $43 billion annually to achieve universal access by 2030. And this is only 2% of current global annual energy investments. Today, we're only at a fraction of those levels. So more than ever before, the investments needed to reach universal access are also clean. As renewable prices continue to fall, new business models for solar-powered off-grid solutions become increasingly affordable. And Africa's huge solar potential, combined with new natural gas development replacing dirty oil-based power, can make Africa the first continent to leapfrog a power sector built on highly polluting fuels such as coal. But despite these opportunities, investment patterns on the continent make tapping these opportunities difficult. Global solar irradiation in Africa is more than twice than in Germany. However, Germany installed more solar PV capacity in 2020 alone than ever installed in sub-Saharan Africa. So international support is very much needed to accelerate investment and overcome the financing barriers. The governments and local private sector actors, as some of you have already mentioned, also have a role to play. Financing projects is easier if countries have national access plans with clear and monitored targets and have created institutions to fulfill access objectives. So this is why the IEA is deeply involved with African governments to build capacity and inform decision-making. Thus far, we've trained more than 800 energy statisticians, modelers, and policymakers from around 30 countries in Africa. And we've developed dedicated outlooks for achieving universal energy access globally and in Africa. These include deep dive regional analyses for 11 separate African countries and regional outlooks for North America, the Sahel, and the Horn of Africa. And next month, on the 18th of November, the IEA and the African Union Commission are co-hosting their third African Energy Ministerial. And at the ministerial, we will discuss what African governments and the international finance community can do to unlock needed financing and investment flows to the region. Africa remains a top priority for the IEA, and achieving universal access to clean, affordable energy within this decade is essential to the world achieving its energy goals, both to reach net zero emissions by 2050, but also to ensure every global citizen benefits from the clean energy transition. Thank you once again very much to the Italian government under its presidency in highlighting, shining a light on this important and critical issue, and for your leadership. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Ambassador Warlick. I think it's very interesting that already after 3-4 interventions, we see some recurring keywords and themes. Africa has been already mentioned many times, for instance. Thank you so much. It was really a privilege for us to hear directly from two leading international organizations like IRENA and the IEA. I would now like to give the floor to Gilberto Dialuce, President of ENEA. This is the National Agency for New Technologies, Energy and Sustainable Economic Development of Italy. And Mr. Dialuce will share his experience and will talk about international experiences by ENEA. Thank you very much for being here with us. Could you please try to talk perhaps closer to the microphone, because we have some trouble hearing. Sorry.
Dear Excellency, our guest, we would like to thank the Ambassador for the invitation to this event involving sanctuaries across the world. This opportunity to share our experience on the world, to access all the commitments at the international level, and also to stimulate the data of sustainability and equality. Policy actions must be centered on people, both at national and multilateral level. This means eradicating poverty as mandated by the present standard of goal of the United Nations, taking equality, which is the rising poverty must be facing the partners with the crimes. The pandemic has had the frontal partner of one of the programs, from climate change to inequality, which are hampering our ability to solve the problem. But it has made one thing clear. We live in an era in which global problems should become global challenges. As we see the rising of energy crisis at the international level, raising major political concerns, creating additional cost burdens on households and affecting global competitiveness. The challenge for transitional policy, therefore, to put in place investment to avoid cost falling on the weakest groups. The further acceleration of this trend may contribute to making energy expenditure one of the main factors of vulnerability to households, and for this reason, the issue of energy poverty is even more at the center of energy policies in industrialized countries as well. Nevertheless, energy poverty is a challenge first and foremost in developing countries, where access to basic energy services such as electricity and cooking is restricted to the achievement of independent development. The international community needs to face a twofold challenge: provide energy to households and provide it free. In this context, research and innovation and national life in AI represented here can, let me say, have to play a role in supporting low and middle income.
I'm sorry, Mr. Dialuce, but we really have some troubles understanding you. I thought it was my problem, but I'm receiving messages from other colleagues who are connected, and they're unable to hear, including the translators. So perhaps shall we try to have you fix the audio issues and perhaps postpone your intervention to a later panel? Would that be okay?
Okay.
Oh, try now.
Okay, we can try.
No. Now we can hear you actually. So there must have been something that you've done, and now we can hear. So please continue your intervention.
I changed a different micro.
Great.
On my computer. Maybe it's better. Okay. In this context, research and innovation and thus research coordination like Enea had to play a role in supporting low and middle income countries to meet the energy challenges and tackle energy poverty. Research and innovation is a key for the energy transition to achieve climate neutrality by 2050. And the challenge is to develop technologies that fits the overall framework conditions in developing countries and that are affordable for low and middle income countries as well. Research and innovation can support the pledge for fighting energy poverty in three ways. The first one is delivering clean energy solution tailored on the specific context of many developing countries, building up skills, training local workforce, and building locally the capacities to operate and maintain technology. And the last one, by strengthening cooperation of energy and technology with developing countries and international organizations. In this regards, Enea carries out cooperation activities on issues of climate change and energy sustainability based on strong collaboration with the Italian Agency for Developed Cooperation and International Organization. As we pointed out in the outlook document that Enea has been tasked to draft as a contribution to the G20 Energy Transition Working Group, the community level is a key to address energy poverty. In developed countries and furthermore in emerging economies, energy communities can be regarded as a model to achieve carbon reduction goals and at the same time to address energy poverty. Enea operates along two main lines, by means of innovation in terms of technology transfer and training, and by integration, that's to say, by means of intervention focused on energy supply with other social and economic sectors in order to reduce the externalities and maximize the sustainability and resilience. Such activities implemented within the framework of cooperation always see Enea operating in close collaboration with local bodies and institutions in many countries, among them in China, in India, in Nigeria, in Pakistan, by means of increasing scientific collaboration and technology transfer. I recall here as an example the Professional Without Borders project that has been implemented in the Ivory Coast, in Ethiopia and Senegal, where full collaboration with local institutions has indeed made renewable energy available to the commercial sector, not only to increase the energy production, but with net growth of local and organic agricultural markets. Other similar projects being carried out in Senegal, where affordable energy solution have been developed for the particular application in agriculture, and other in Ethiopia. Finally, to end my contribution, research plays also a necessary and important role in defining a methodology for assessing what energy poverty is considered at international level. As we know, we lack a common definition of energy poverty, and consequently we do not have a shared roadmap for this. This is not due to a lack of agreement among players, but to the extremely complex nature of this phenomenon. Because the landscape is extremely heterogeneous. It varies from countries that have adopted specific measures to combat energy poverty, to countries where energy poverty is not recognized as a phenomenon but in itself, but as another facet of general poverty. A strong call for a standard definition of energy poverty has been at the center of the debate within the G20 Energy Transition Working Group, chaired by Italy this year, that highlighted the need to outline a political agenda built around a common definition of energy poverty that allows to overcome the distinction between emerging countries and advanced economy. This would strengthen the capacity for international coordination and also by encouraging the adoption of integrated solutions. As an EA, we are actively contributing to this debate, in particular at European level. During our presidency in the EU network of energy efficiency agencies, we have focused our mandate on energy poverty, delivering a set of recommendations on priorities, methodology, governance, and needs, and setting up a first guidance on how to tackle energy poverty locally. And to conclude, we all agree that eradicating energy poverty is an ambitious challenge, and today's events provides an opportunity to reflect together on the central cooperation in order to achieve the ultimate goal of making the energy transition that leaves no one behind. On the contrary, the energy transition has to be the opportunity to trigger a sustainable and inclusive growth, particularly in the less developed and undeveloped countries. Thanks for the attention.
Thank you very much, Mr. Dialuce. I'm particularly happy that you mentioned the issue of not having a common definition of energy poverty. As a co-chair of the T20 this year, I had the pleasure to read a policy brief authored by Professor De Maio and others, where this issue was highlighted. It's part of the T20 policy briefs, and I really recommend everyone to take a look at the T20 website, because there are a lot of interesting papers on subjects like this one. So thank you very much. This was the end of our first block. Now we will move to the second block, and we will actually switch to Italian. So for all the non-Italian speakers, you can find a button for simultaneous translation, as I said, in the bottom right corner of the Zoom platform. Passiamo dunque all'italiano. Grazie per essere qui con noi a Leone Tarabusi e Giulio Dal Magro. Abbiamo ascoltato delle testimonianze sulla prospettiva internazionale. Adesso ci spostiamo un po' di più sulla considerazione del contributo dell'Italia all'SDG appunto 7. Parleremo un po' più nel dettaglio delle sfide specifiche che esistono per l'Africa subsahariana, con una testimonianza diretta, e parleremo appunto delle implicazioni dell'accesso all'energia o della mancanza di accesso all'energia per lo sviluppo socio-economico delle comunità locali, e parleremo anche di aspetti a volte un po' meno approfonditi nelle discussioni, per così dire, mainstream, come ad esempio le questioni di genere. Quindi vorrei adesso dare la parola appunto a Leone Tarabusi dell'AICS, l'Agenzia Italiana per la Cooperazione allo Sviluppo. Grazie.
Buongiorno a tutti, grazie mille innanzitutto per averci invitato a questo seminario. Per noi è un'opportunità un po' per raccontare cosa facciamo dal campo e sostanzialmente racconterà un po' quello che vogliamo fare per far fronte ai problemi che i nostri colleghi hanno un po' riportato negli interventi precedenti. Io ho una presentazione da fare, la mando, così la condividiamo. Spero che si veda.
Sì, però dovresti mettere schermo intero, se possibile. Ecco. Perfetto, perfetto.
Va bene, perfetto. Allora, grazie ancora. Leone Tarabusi, dalla sede AICS di Maputo, quindi Mozambico, vi parlerò del programma Illumina, accesso all'energia per lo sviluppo locale e l'empowerment femminile. Innanzitutto diciamo che cosa fa AICS a Maputo. Noi abbiamo 5 cluster settoriali, il primo di intervento, quindi il primo è relativo ai servizi basici, quindi educazione, salute, servizi legati all'identità. Abbiamo poi quello dello sviluppo economico, innovazione e capitale umano. agricoltura, sicurezza alimentare, sviluppo rurale, sviluppo urbano, infrastrutture e finalmente quello dell'ambiente e dell'accesso all'energia di cui io mi occupo e nel quale si inquadra questo programma. Prima cosa volevo dare una foto del Mozambico. Dunque, il Mozambico è un paese di Africa subsahariana abbastanza grande, 800.000 km², circa 2 volte e mezzo l'Italia, una costa di 2.500 km, un paese come la maggior parte dei paesi dell'Africa subsahariana con un contesto prevalentemente rurale, il 70% della popolazione vive in ambito rurale, l'agricoltura è molto importante per il PIL ed è anche la principale fonte di lavoro, rappresenta l'80% dell'impiego. È un paese che allo stesso tempo ha molte risorse naturali, quindi foreste, grande presenza di acqua, risorse ittiche, biodiversità, ma anche risorse minerarie rilevanti come il gas e il carbone. La popolazione non è una popolazione molto numerosa, considerando specialmente il territorio, parliamo di circa 29 milioni di persone, di cui la metà sono donne e il 45% ha meno di 15 anni, quindi è un paese giovane. Purtroppo, come molti paesi africani, è un paese dove la vita non è semplice, il livello di alfabetizzazione è piuttosto basso, l'aspettativa di vita è sui 50 anni e si attesta sempre nelle ultime posizioni, purtroppo, dell'indice di sviluppo umano e delle Nazioni Unite. Venendo invece al settore che ci interessa, che è il settore dell'energia, in Mozambico sostanzialmente soltanto il 40% delle popolazioni ha accesso all'energia, come dicevano appunto i colleghi prima, in Africa l'accesso all'energia non è abbastanza comune. In contesto rurale si abbassa al 6%, quindi c'è una grossa differenza tra le città e l'ambito rurale. La rete copre solo il 96% della popolazione, scusate, il 26% della popolazione e soltanto il 14% ha accesso all'energia rinnovabile. La principale fonte di energia quindi deriva dalla biomassa, la biomassa che in Africa significa carbone e legna, con le implicazioni che questo ha sulla degradazione del territorio, sulla deforestazione e l'emissione chiaramente di anidride carbonica nell'atmosfera. Dall'altro lato ci sono enormi potenzialità sul solare per la posizione chiaramente geografica e il clima, però è rappresenta soltanto l'1% della produzione nazionale, l'energia prodotta col sistema fotovoltaico. Per questo appunto si è pensato al programma Illumina. Illumina cosa vuole? Vuole promuovere lo sviluppo locale da un punto di vista socio-economico, migliorando l'accesso alle energie rinnovabili, appunto, in 2 province, nella provincia di Cabo Delgado e nella provincia delle Zambesi, tutte e 2 nel nord del paese. Parliamo di circa 100.000 beneficiari. Il valore del programma sui 5 milioni ha una durata di 3 anni ed è eseguito in collaborazione con il Ministero delle Energie e le Risorse Minerarie, che è appunto il nostro partner istituzionale. La parte operativa è demandata a 2 organizzazioni della società civile, quindi abbiamo la Fondazione AFSI che opera nella provincia di Cabo Delgado e la Fondazione il COSF che opera in Zambesi. Le attività che cosa prevedono? In Cabo Delgado si vuole creare una mini rete per il distretto di Balama, circa 10.000 beneficiari, per fornire appunto attraverso il sistema fotovoltaico energia in un'area non coperta. Il COSV invece si concentra nell'energia rivolta a centri di appoggio appunto a giovani e ragazze. Oltre a questo ci sono una serie di attività comuni ai 2 progetti abbastanza similari, quindi abbiamo complessivamente nelle 2 province la distribuzione di quasi 5.000 sistemi fotovoltaici a uso familiare, in più c'è l'incentivo alla produzione e commercializzazione di sistemi anche a scopo produttivo, quindi per pozzi, per sistemi di irrigazione, conservazione, eccetera, e poi si vuole promuovere l'utilizzazione delle cucine migliorate a carbone e a gas, sempre attraverso la promozione della commercializzazione della produzione. Insieme a questo ci sono tante attività anche di formazione e capacity building, sia a livello istituzionale, ma soprattutto a livello delle associazioni di base e del settore privato. L'impatto sperato di tutta questa attività qual è? Si vuole da un punto migliorare appunto l'accesso ai servizi per le popolazioni di riferimento, Dall'altro lato ridurre il lavoro domestico, questo in particolare per le donne che hanno un ruolo preminente appunto in Africa, come tutti sappiamo, e allo stesso tempo generare opportunità di impiego e promuovere lo sviluppo del settore privato. Il tutto appunto, come è stato già sottolineato, con un'attenzione particolare alla questione di genere, alle donne che sono centrali nell'economia africana, quindi promuovendo le loro capacità, la loro funzione nella società e anche la loro sicurezza. A questo punto vorrei lasciarvi una testimonianza dal campo e quindi c'è un piccolo video che ci racconta un po' che cosa fa il progetto. Buona visione.
Chamo-me Ana Sinésio, sou aldeia de Mavanda, distrito de Montepuez. Eu sou casada, tenho 3 filhas. Eu, para cozinhar, cozinho com lenha. Na cozinha tradicional, o problema tem fumo, sai muito quando nós estivemos a cozinhar com 3 pedras, sai muito fumo e gasta lenhas. Começamos em 2019, até hoje é que estamos a cozinhar com fogão por lenha. Num fogão melhorado faz bem, porque diminui as doenças, o fumo não sai bem e o lume não aquece muito, as lenhas não estamos a gastar muito. Costumo cozinhar legumes, costumo cozinhar moringa. Amanhã vou cozinhar feijão nhemba. Eu aqui estou feliz tanto com a minha família e estamos bem melhorados e vivemos bem.
Grazie per questa testimonianza e anche per il video molto inspirational, come si dice. Allora, io adesso passerei la parola a Giulio Dalmagro, Head for Finance for Development, Cassa Depositi e Prestiti, quindi una prospettiva da un grande investitore italiano. Vorrei chiedere appunto a Giulio Dalmagro quali sono le sue riflessioni sulle opportunità anche offerte da soluzioni off-grid, mini-grid, sono già state menzionate relativamente al contesto appunto mozambicano, e come ci descriverebbe gli sviluppi a livello di finanza verde e il contributo della finanza verde nel aumentare appunto l'accesso all'energia. Grazie. Purtroppo non sentiamo. Io continuo a non sentire. Facciamo un terzo tentativo, poi semmai posticipiamo l'intervento magari. No, purtroppo non sentiamo. Magari può provare a scollegare le cuffie? Può essere lì il problema?
Sì. A cambiare
Perfetto,
setting.
Ora sentiamo.
Perfetto, grazie, scusatemi. Allora sì, utilizzerò una presentazione semplicemente per avere un quadro anche visuale di cosa stiamo facendo attualmente. Fatemi sapere se riusciate a vederla. Riuscite a vederla?
Sì.
Sì, benissimo.
Allora, grazie mille. Dunque, molto rapidamente, intanto un quadro del CDP, Cassa Depositi e Prestiti, è un'istituzione attiva da molti anni, da più di 170 anni in realtà in Italia, nel finanziare comuni, regioni, province e infrastrutture sul territorio nazionale. Nel corso dell'ultimo decennio CDP è diventata operativa anche in ambito internazionale ed è con la legge 2014, comunque operativamente da qualche anno, che siamo divenuti l'istituzione italiana finanziaria per la cooperazione e lo sviluppo. E quindi abbiamo iniziato anche con risorse proprie a operare nell'ambito della finanza per lo sviluppo in paesi emergenti, su settori ad alto impatto. Ecco, questi sono geograficamente gli ambiti di intervento di Cassa Depositi e Prestiti, sono i 142 paesi che l'OCSE indica come idonei per attività di cooperazione allo sviluppo. Alcuni hanno sono dei paesi target, ma comunque sono tutti paesi su cui possiamo intervenire, con una serie di settori che vengono ritenuti settori di particolare interesse. Ovviamente il settore dell'energia è uno di questi, e con un tema trasversale che è quello del climate change, sul quale anche il nuovo piano industriale in fase di definizione avrà presumibilmente un focus particolare. Ecco, io andrei rapidamente invece a descrivere quello che stiamo facendo, anche perché mi ricollego al discorso del mini grid e dell'off grid. Noi possiamo intervenire sia con un'attività diretta, quindi finanziando specifici progetti, lo abbiamo fatto, questo è il caso del Perù per esempio, un finanziamento per l'installazione di sistemi solari in zone rurali, quindi piccoli sistemi solari, finanziando una specifica azienda con un progetto particolare. Ma l'abbiamo fatto in maniera dimensionalmente molto più rilevante in via indiretta, quindi attraverso investimenti in fondi, sia fondi che operavano in ambito equity, come il caso dell'Africa Renewable Energy Fund, in cui abbiamo investito 30 milioni che è focalizzato su progetti di energia rinnovabile in Africa subsahariana, sia con fondi di debito. Qui parliamo di tagli ancora più importanti, 120 milioni di investimenti in fondi che intervengono acquisendo green bond, quindi acquisendo obbligazioni che sono collegate a dei progetti che rispettino i Green Bond Principle, che siano progetti particolarmente focalizzati in ambito clima. Da questo punto di vista devo dire la finanza sui mercati di capitali attraverso questo tipo di obbligazioni sta vedendo una dinamica di crescita molto importante, nella quale devo dire Cassa Depositi e Prestiti, pur essendo un'istituzione molto nuova, si sta muovendo con una certa importanza. Siamo investiti nei due fondi più rilevanti, Ego e Regio, che vedono una sponsorizzazione forte di Banca Mondiale e AFC, che sono probabilmente oggi i due fondi leader nei green bond in paesi emergenti. E sempre in via indiretta attraverso finanziamenti a istituzioni multilaterali, quindi finanziamenti a banche di sviluppo regionali, in particolare direi di particolare rilievo il caso del finanziamento alla Corporazione Andina di Fomento. In questo caso parliamo complessivamente di 200 milioni di euro utilizzati per finanziare programmi della Corporazione Andina di Fomento in America Latina, chiaramente, sul settore in particolare climate change. Quindi anche in questo caso il nostro intervento, per risultare più capillare, è un intervento indiretto. Da questo punto di vista chiaramente diventa importante poi un'attività di monitoraggio di queste progettualità, che avviene attraverso specifiche previsioni contrattuali e attraverso la nostra presenza in comitati interni, in particolare ai fondi, che verificano l'effettivo utilizzo delle risorse per gli scopi concordati. Quindi direi in generale, soprattutto quando parliamo di piccole progettualità, Ci sembra particolarmente interessante questa modalità indiretta che consente di arrivare capillarmente su grandi numeri. Grazie mille.
Thank you very much to Giulio Dalmagro. I will now switch back to English because we are moving to the third block, which is again in English. And in this third block, we will look at the future of financial innovation and new technologies for universal access. Our first speaker for the third block is Jorge Moreira da Silva, the OECD Director for Development Cooperation. I would like to ask him what are his thoughts on the socio-economic ramifications of energy access and also of the international endeavor towards its achievement, and what new instruments, in his view, can lead to universal energy access. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Luca. It's great to be with all colleagues today, and I think that after the remarkable presentations, my task is much easier. This focus on how innovative finance can help to tackle energy poverty has been at the center of the work of the OECD, and especially the work of the Development Cooperation Directorate and the Development Assistance Committee. And in the advance of the COP, this could not be more relevant to current debates we are having at the OECD, precisely at the Development Assistance Committee, the DAC. As you know, energy access is at the crux of every major decision on development and climate, especially those around supporting the transition to net zero emissions required to avoid catastrophic climate change. As many has shared with us today, developing countries, and in particular least developed countries, are facing a double challenge in their energy transition, reaching universal access to modern energy services while participating at the same time in the global energy transition towards net zero. But this is also a unique opportunity. While building their new infrastructure, developing countries have the opportunity to leapfrog outdated technologies and building sustainable infrastructure that will power their economies for future decades. This is an incredible chance to achieve both the social and the development benefits of access to modern energy and the international environmental objectives, namely the Paris Agreement. To power their energy transition, developing countries need to have access to the right kind of development finance. As a whole, development finance for the energy sector is significant, and I will share some figures with you today. In the last 5 years, we recorded energy-related activities for over $33 billion of development finance per year. This includes both concessional and non-concessional activities from bilateral and multilateral partners. This includes ODA, official development assistance from DAC members, which totaled over $10 billion per year. We are also tracking private finance mobilized by official finance and mechanisms like guarantees, which as a low estimate was an additional $11.5 billion per year for energy in developing countries. So this was in the last 5 years. These flows have the power to steer and catalyze investments in sustainable energy for developing countries. It's also a step forward towards the total amount needed to achieve universal energy access according to IEA estimates, which is around $40 billion per year. However, it falls far too short, and it is decreasing indeed. Development finance, both bilateral and multilateral for energy sector, decreased from $5 billion in 2016 to $25 billion in 2019, excluding fossil fuels. Some of this finance also works against meeting the double energy challenge for developing countries. And you can see in this chart some of the challenges we face in this context. According again to IEA, and I want to praise IEA for the remarkable work and the report that they've issued recently on net zero. Annual clean energy investment in developing countries from all sources needs to increase by more than 7 times, from less than $150 billion to over $1 trillion by 2030 in order to reach net zero emissions by 2050. Here we have a major threat in the level of finance, but also what the finance is supporting. So it's not just about the amount, it's about the misalignment. Development finance has support renewable energy, it's true, but also fossil fuel activity. Total ODA for the energy sector in 2019 was $10.6 billion. Of this amount, $4.2 billion supported fossil fuel-based energy and $2.7 billion supported renewable energy. Between 2015 and 2019, private finance mobilized for fossil fuel activities, power generation, refineries, upstream activities, for instance, was an additional $3.1 billion per year. Also, energy support needs to be better targeted. Only a small share of development finance reaches the countries with largest energy access deficit. For instance, only around 30% of development finance for the energy sector reaches the 10 countries with higher electricity access deficit. We know that we can't bridge this tremendous finance gap overnight, but we are taking steps. We are working at the OECD and in the DAC to align ODA in support to clean energy, which will shift some resources to the positive side of the ledger. We are also working with Italy to promote the use of innovative finance mechanisms to make sustainable energy access truly universal. One example is the Green Social and Sustainability or GSS bonds. It's an important example of innovative instruments that hold the potential to help close the financing gap. At the request of the G20 presidency, we have done a stocktake report with Italy's Cassa Depositi Prestiti, which has just been published. I will present this afternoon. This report analyzes the GSS bond market, highlight gaps and challenges, and identify policy recommendations for decision makers. We have focused on this kind of bonds because they provide long-term financing compatible with green infrastructure projects. This is what the report terms the greenium. Secondly, given the short maturity of bank liabilities and the lack of instruments for hedging during risks, the capacity of banks to provide long-term green loans is constrained in many countries. And in this context, the role of public development banks is crucial as issuers of green and social bonds, as anchoring investors, as mobilizers of private finance, and also as providers of technical assistance. Our report recommends prioritizing SDG alignment in the mandate of public development banks in their strategies and objectives and in their practical operations. We must also work to tailor the issuance of bonds to local context and design risk mitigation strategies. Blended finance mechanisms can play crucial roles as guarantees or by providing first loss tranches to enhance the risk return profiles of projects in developing economies and ultimately attract institutional investments. To conclude, in both alignment and innovative finance, this requires partnership. The OECD is working to shape standards, and we look forward to working in partnership with all of you to ensure these principles are well reflected in practice. And again, I would like to thank Italy for organizing this important webinar and for their leadership in this agenda. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I would like to invite the audience to post questions. There is a dedicated Q&A area here in Zoom, or domande e risposte if you're an Italian speaker and you have an Italian Zoom platform. So please write them down, and I will use them for the panel debate in a moment. But before moving to the panel debate, we have our last intervention, I would say last but not least, Roberto Vigotti from Rest for Africa. We've heard other presentations, Engineer Vigotti, on Sub-Saharan Africa. So what is your experience, your perspective? How can Europe help? And also, what are your views on the importance of on-grid solutions and electricity network expansion? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Luca. Thank you to all the attendants. I think I have a short video, 1 minute, that should be, and then I will comment this video with a few slides. Thank you so much.
Why is it so hard to invest in renewable energy in Africa? Because it's not always a fertile land for private investments, with geopolitical and financial risks, insufficient support to investors throughout the project cycle. Learning how to deal with this background will unlock renewable energy investments at scale, providing Africa with the energy it needs. There are many existing European schemes supporting investments in Africa. Their impact is still low as they are marked by a high level of fragmentation. How can we stimulate investments in Africa when public money alone is not enough? By providing a new integrated program built on best practices and combining policies, regulations, financing, and de-risking, it will reduce fragmentation and create synergies among the existing instruments. Renew Africa. This is the decade of action. The time to act is now.
Thank you so much. I'm trying also to share my short presentation, but before doing so, let me say that thank you for the invitation. We appreciate what Ambassador Mary Warlick said before, that 30 million more African, even though they have access to energy, they cannot afford just to use it. So even though the grids arrive to them, so this is more dramatic than ever. And also because in this way, we understand that access to energy and poverty is not only rural and off-grid, but it's also urban and peri-urban areas. 50% of African population gathers around the main cities, and the striking example between areas of California style and slum style is there. So the issue is that more than rural. By the way, Ambassador, I was between 85 and 97 the chairman of the Renewable Energy Working Party of the IEA. And let me say, at that time, they told me that we were the Cinderella option. Now, luckily, the Cinderella is now on board. Also, you may also want to know that 2% only of the global renewable deployment in the last 10 years has happened in Africa. And we publish a small booklet you can download from our website. We can understand why this happens. So 2% of the total renewable installation in Africa. Finally, today I'm going to speak briefly on the role of private investment in Africa, and why in Italy we started this idea of providing support to the Commission in the guarantee issue. Now, I think I move myself. We motivated Renew Africa when we found out that in our studies that many of the European excellent instruments are very fragmented and they don't impact as they should. You see on the right some numbers which tell you why so many instruments are not really achieving an impact. Even scaling solar for the World Bank did not achieve an impact because they are fragmented, they don't cover all the energy, and they don't cover even, most importantly, grids. So we asked from Rome, 2 years ago, we had a conference in Rome, all those actors you see here from private sector and also from banks, even Cassa Depositi is there, also European Bank, to gather together to launch a proposition to the Commission to create a comprehensive European program for investment in Africa. It should be a country comprehensive, cover all renewable energy and grids, which are unfortunately forgotten. And you have to invest in grid as much you have to invest in clean energy production. Otherwise, the energy will never go to the people. It's like building a car factory and don't building the roads in a way. then we want to focus mostly on utility scale project to feed the majority of the Africans and provide, of course, an holistic approach in the various phases of the project. We have 4 items. We work on high-level policy dialogue, on financial support, on technical assistance, in capacity building to create a pipeline of sustainable and bankable projects. In this moment, we are doing 2 main things. We are now rolling our idea in Africa. We are going to Mozambique next week, Kenya, Ghana, Senegal, Ethiopia, Ivory Coast, to raise awareness of the possibility of having this guarantee system efficient and impactful in Africa. Those 6 countries have been chosen by our constituency to be the one where we can learn more from them. And of course, also understanding the through Union Africa, what are the issues that each country has to solve. And finally, this is my last slide. When we go there, we are going to present also what we call the missing link. We are investigating the policy and regulatory framework of any country together with UNECA. We are also providing them the result of the latest investment risk survey we have done on Sub-Saharan Africa, and we propose to them a capacity building program. All of them you can ask me or download from our website. So the Rest for Africa Foundation and our Union Africa member are advocating the institution in Brussels for the inclusion of such views in the comprehensive process of establishing a new support program. We really hope this will happen. Okay. I'm here for question later, but thank you for your attention.
Thank you so much. I would now like to open to a short panel debate, actually, because we are close to the end of this very interesting webinar. So I would like to go back to Mary Warlick and Gilberto Dialuce, if they're still with us. COVID-19 has really shown the need for very close international cooperation, right? But cooperation has not always been great. We have seen a lot of countries moving autonomously, and sometimes there haven't been displays of solidarity even between neighboring countries. So my question for you is whether you see a risk that recovery plans that have been implemented in response to COVID-19 are very much focused on national growth and bringing it back to the topic of today, to improving energy access, or at least averting energy poverty at home, and whether the dimension of international aid, cross-border aid, has been a little bit neglected. Also, the financial firepower of developing countries is much smaller. So does the fact that industrialized countries have been able to allocate really a lot of funds also in energy risk, increasing the gap between industrialized nations and developing countries? We know there's COP26 upcoming, but are there perhaps other key international meetings in the agenda that, in your opinion, can really be the occasions where industrialized countries can finally really step up the commitment to climate finance, also in favor of energy access in developing countries? So I would like to ask this question to both Mary Warlick and Gilberto Dialuce. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'd be happy to come in on a couple of points. You raised a number of really important questions, and I think they go feedback to the remarks that several colleagues have already made with regard to the financing challenges. Our analysis shows that, you're right, that the COVID-19 pandemic has decreased the flow of new investments and increased the cost of capital in developing economies. And while many countries have put forward quite extensive recovery plans related to the pandemic, our tracking shows that, in fact, advanced economies have spent 10 times more in terms of their recovery financing programs or recovery packages on financing the clean energy transition than have emerging and developing economies. So there's clearly an imbalance there in terms of the financing that governments themselves are committing to this particular sector. So again, as some have commented already, there's no question that there is a need for continued international support to accelerate investment and overcome these financing barriers. It requires, the right kinds of policy tools and frameworks established by governments to attract capital. It requires continued attention on the part of multilateral development banks in terms of financing projects and kind of paving the way for private finance to eventually come in, which is going to be critical. And also these sort of concessional and blended financing structures will play a critical role in closing the gap that is in addition to the important policy environment created by local governments. So there are a lot of steps to be taken, and this also important is countries setting clear targets. If we come back to the electricity access issue, countries setting clear targets for themselves to reach. As of last year, more than 40% of sub-Saharan and developing Asian countries had not yet set clear electricity access targets. And so there's an important combination, I think, of both, as I said, strong regulatory and policy frameworks, as well as continued strong attention by international public financing to help accelerate and stimulate the important longer-term private investment that's going to be critical to addressing and supporting the clean energy transition. Thank you.
Thank you very much. In the meantime, both Francesco La Camera and Gilberto Dialuce had to leave us, but we still have a lot of other speakers that are still with us. We have a number of questions in the chat, so I think we could perhaps collect them. There are questions on the importance of microcredit, so perhaps some of you can elaborate on that, and also quite a lot of attention towards gender issues. So perhaps Leone, Tarabusi, and then Giulio Dalmagro, but also perhaps Roberto Vigotti and Jorge Moreira da Silva can comment on these. I also have an additional curiosity about energy efficiency, actually, because it really seems like the silver bullet in many ways, right? I mean, energy efficiency reduces your energy bill, and having some interventions in favor of reducing energy bills looks particularly important in this current phase of very high energy prices. It increases your sovereignty when it comes to energy, and in a geopolitically volatile world, many governments are in favor of that. And of course, it reduces energy poverty. But then at the same time, it appears a little neglected in international discussions compared to other solutions that are part of the energy transition. So I was wondering also if any of you has some comments on why that is, on whether they share this impression that I have, and what can be done perhaps to relaunch energy efficiency internationally. But perhaps let's start with microcredit and gender issues. Leone, would you like to pick up this one?
Yes, thank you very much indeed. Indeed, I saw the question. I was about to reply in writing, but it's good. I can reply directly on voice. Yeah, indeed, concerning the role of women in Africa is always very important in all the sector, and also in the business sector. Mozambique is a bit peculiar because comparing to other countries, the women are quite strong, and they are very much involved sometimes and also in the economic activities. Through Illumina, also the activity try to promote the participation in business activity. There are training related to associationism, also to access to credit. So all these to strengthen the capacity and the role of the women in the society. And especially in the North, where the women are very important because of their position, comparing to the South, at least, it's a matriarchal society. So they play a very important role. So they can run businesses, they can be involved. And this is specifically one of the aim of the project, them to be much more strengthened and involved in those kind of activity, promoting business and also capacity and skills to get improvement on that side.
Julio Dalmagro, would you like to comment on any of the issues that have been brought up?
Well, I'm looking at the chart and I see there is a specific question on CDP in Africa. Well, Africa is definitely a priority area for us. As I mentioned before, we're quite new as a development finance institution, but Africa is definitely, if you look at the deals we close in the first year and a half of activity in the private sector, almost all of them are in Africa. As I said before, we're looking at specific projects, and we do have a pipeline of investments in especially in renewable energy sector. Of course, it's very important for us, being a new institution, to share pipeline with other players. So we're creating a connection with other DFIs, other European DFIs. We're part of the European Development Finance Institution Network, and multilateral banks active in Africa. The first two transactions we closed in Africa were one with IFC, the World Bank, and the other with the African Development Bank. So we're trying to liaise and to partner with the multilaterals. In terms of indirect, as I mentioned before, being a very small team, we try to go for an indirect financing. So we were looking at funds, and the first equity fund we closed was in Africa, the RF one I mentioned before. There's another one we hope to close by the end of the year. And we're discussing potential financing with the other multilateral regional multilateral banks, which are quite important in order to get especially to small scale projects.
Thank you. That was very interesting. In the meantime, there has also been another question in the chat on the importance of clean cooking and on whether clean cooking efforts are being somewhat dwarfed by the whole narrative on electrification. So in giving the floor to Jorge and Roberto, I will just throw this question to the group, but please feel free to pick up on any point you've heard so far.
Shall I start?
Yes, please.
Thank you. I think that this question on cooking is related with other questions that are in the chat that look beyond just energy supply in the terms of electricity. I think that it's really important to have a perspective that is beyond ODA. Clearly, if you see the figures that I've shared with you, we only have $2.7 billion of ODA to renewable energy, when we have already 150 billion support to developing countries on clean energy. So you can see clearly that ODA represents a very small amount of the support to clean energy in developing countries. And then if you see what is required, which is 1 trillion, you can compare the 2.7 billion in ODA to the trillion that is needed. So I think that this perspective of beyond ODA, it's vital. We will not reach the net zero in supporting developing countries if we are not able to mobilize private sector. And the question, as Mary was outlining, is the mobilization can only be real if we have the regulatory frameworks, the policy, the enabling context. Nobody will invest if there is no stability, predictability, a regulatory framework for tariffs in energy, creating the space for innovation, for investment. So I think that the role of ODA is very important precisely on capacity building in supporting developing countries in the regulatory framework. And then, so beyond ODA, beyond finance, but there is this element that is beyond supply. And Luca, you just mentioned the role of energy efficiency. We tend to address these debates just in the perspective of supply. And even if we green all the supply, we will miss the issue. So energy efficiency, sustainable mobility, it's vital. Imagine if we green the entire supply chain, we still have an issue regarding transportation and mobility. So renewable energy on electricity alone will not fix the problem. So I agree with you that both energy efficiency and sustainable mobility plays a vital role. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. That was great. Roberto Vigotti?
Yes, I accepted the question, but I don't see competition between electricity and cooking. I mean, I just showed before that even electricity is ridiculously low. So I think we should have, each one should do his own job. In Rest for Africa, we not only do the so-called electricity, and we have published this wonderful book you can take download from the website. It's also beautifully graphically, which shows scaling up power, but also we have published also the solution for cooking. We think that more renewable, more water, and more food will make more Africa. And we claim that the water energy food model is the one who may solve many of those problems. In fact, if the gentleman who made the question is interested, he can also download this in-depth business model for mini grids for solving rural electrification, including cooking. So I think we both do the same, but I will say that now at the African European Foundation, preparing the message for the African European Summit, we propose a manifesto for clean cooking working there. But the actors are different. There are different actors for utility scale, a different actor mini grids, and different actor for cooking. So I think each one should do his own job, and we can share and enhance the synergy there. But please download my books, and then you will be see that we work on all fields. Thank you so much.
That was great, and I think I want to hire the person that made the covers of your book. They look really beautiful. This was really great. It was a journey through the topic of the fight against energy poverty, really hearing from many different perspectives, you know, from investors, cooperation agencies, international organizations. We've been talking about very innovative themes, you know, leapfrogging green finance, how to reorganize ODA, how to promote international cooperation, also very updated discussion, you know, to the impact of COVID-19. So I really learned a lot. I'm very grateful to Ambassador Marrapodi for relieving me of the task of sharing some concluding remarks, because that's often a very difficult one. But on my behalf, on my side, on my end, I would like to really thank all the participants who have joined us today, and especially all the speakers that have shared their experiences. So now I will like to give the floor to Ambassador Marrapodi for concluding remarks. Thank you.
Well, thanks, Luca. I would say that actually I don't know why I have why this task is on me. I mean, I try to avoid normally difficult challenges like this in the panels, but of course I'm very happy to do it, because as I said at the beginning, this is a panel with so many friends, and so I'm really glad to have the chance of say a few words at the end. I mean, it's well, once again I wish to thank Ambassador Bernardini. Antonio is a very good friend. We have known each other for so many years, actually since our very first days in the ministry, and I was really glad for this for his initiative and the organization of this panel, and of course many thanks also to the colleagues Alessandra and Valeria who organized who joined in the organization. The discussion was very interesting. I say that in the first session on international cooperation to tackle energy poverty, we heard two many interesting points of view. I heard carefully to what Ambassador Mary Warlick said, and I have appreciated the strong focus on Africa she mentioned, and I could not agree more with her on that. As I said in the opening of the event, Italian cooperation is trying to concentrate its efforts in the continent. Francesco, I took note of Francesco La Camera. I took note of the very important emphasis that that Francesco put on inclusivity and energy regulation. I think that Italy, with its experience, might contribute positively in this sector, and I think that we should explore the possibility of further work with IRENA in this regard. Dr. Gilberto Dialuce, I think it was also very appropriate to highlight the importance of research and innovation when we talk of new energy and new and efficient energy systems. Energy and innovation are a must-do for sustainability. In the following section, the Italian contribution, the contribution to the SDG7. Well, of course, Dr. Tirabusi from the agency in Maputo has showed us a very interesting video on one of our flag intervention, the flagship intervention Illumina. I had mentioned it at the beginning. And this Illumina, this project is something that I very often mention in meetings on energy. I think that this his intervention is giving me the chance to spend a couple of words on the importance of clean cooking. And in fact, I think that if roughly 800 million people worldwide lack access to electricity, about 3 times that number have no way of cooking, have no access to cooking cleanly, no way to cooking cleanly. And besides jeopardizing economic growth, this has serious consequences on health of families, and of course also to contributes also heavily to pollution. Also, I heard Giulio D'Almagro, with whom we work very frequently in the relationship between the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Cassa Depositi e Prestiti. And I mean, Cassa Depositi e Prestiti was one of the main bets of the new Italian cooperation systems. And I think that he illustrated us very well. I have nothing more to say about the innovative financing instruments which are available to support the renewable revolution. And this is something that comes very often in our discussion. Let me said also from here, I think that there will be an end to this BTC. I hope that I send my regards from here to Jorge Moreira da Silva, the director of the Development Cooperation Directorate at the OECD, is also our true host in Paris for this event. With this intervention on the financial innovation and new technology, actually I think that he gave us some detailed financial figures which show us the leading role energy plays in development cooperation and how the financing is almost equally distributed between DAC members and the private sector. Wish also to say that if this financing could be used in a systemic way, involving simultaneously all the actors of cooperation, profit and non-profit, probably we will get even better results in the advancing of the Paris commitment. Also, my best regards to Roberto Vigotti. I agree with you, Luca. I mean, that the covers of his books are very nice. We all would like to know who is the designer. But even more than that, I would say that Dr. Vigotti is always ready to show the many very good books, very intense in contents that that Rest for Africa is producing. Roberto Vigotti outlined an interesting picture on how his foundation cooperate with the European Union to help the Union to actually deliver some targeted commitments abroad under the European Green Deal. And finally, once again, words of gratitude to all of you, and of course to you, Dr. Franza, for sharing this very interesting this very interesting panel. And once again, many thanks to all of you. It was for me, it was also it was a learning experience today. Many thanks. Over to you.
Thank you. Well, with this, we come to the end of our event. So once again, thank you to both participants and speakers, and have a great day.
Don't be only the cover. Go inside the book. At least look at the pictures, the photos.
And read the books.
Covers are nice, but the content is more than that. Please.
It's even better. It's even better.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye bye. Arrivederci.